it's in us. It's a belief system before we even start going out there and start investing. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Can you believe tomorrow is already Valentine's Day? Today, Steve and I decided we would discuss guilt instead of anything positive around Valentine's Day. Just kidding. Actually, we want to discuss some of the aspects of guilt around, those holiday seasons, being split upon, how you feel guilty about not gifting around Valentine's Day, or maybe you really don't care about Valentine's Day. Maybe it doesn't mean anything to you. And I think it's kind of fun to play with this aspect of guilt and shame. And here is Steve. Let's get him in. Hey!
It worked on time this time.
Woo!
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good.
Hello. I want to say an early happy Valentine's Day to you. I know tomorrow is Valentine's Day, but I don't think we'll get a chance to chat. So I want to send you lots of love.
I thought you were coming to see me.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
That would be so cool. I would love to get out of here for a little while. Oh, too funny.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day, and to all anybody who tunes in, happy Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day comes with all kinds of expectations, though, too, doesn't it, Tamra?
Absolutely, yes. It's kind of funny how we get so kind of programmed, if you will, on the Hallmark holidays, right? I mean, guilted into everything.
That's right, yeah, because I'm already, my wife's out of town. She's out of town the rest of the week, and it's like, okay, should I send her flowers to her hotel? But then she's leaving on Friday, and she won't. It's like, what do I do? I mean, oh man, if you don't do anything, you feel guilty. If you do the wrong thing, it's like, what a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? I think that some of these Hallmark holidays, some of these, spreading chocolate, and for a girl like me, I love my chocolate. So send it my way. Just kidding.
I got a lot of Lindor truffles that I can send over to you.
I know, it's not really on my diet though.
Yeah, you're like, that. Don't talk to me about diets. I'm on one right now. Well, it's been about 7 years, but you know how that goes.
It's a permanent lifestyle now. It's no longer a diet.
That's right. It's always a diet, and I'm always going off my diet, and then I got to go back on my diet. So
it's true withholding, right? That's when we start, like, the real diets are like that thing that we say that we can't have these things, and we start totally feeling, I want that. That's all we want. I remember our donut focus. We were talking about the donuts.
Donuts. I don't think I've had a donut now in probably, I'll bet you 5 months, 6 months, and
Wow.
and after you get past it, you lose that craving. It's funny, you lose that craving for it, because now I can walk into the grocery store and I can go right by the bakery section and go, hey, and now I could have a donut, because truthfully, nothing I've done has changed my weight so far. But I haven't done any aerobic workouts. I do lifting and I do this. No, you want me to lift this up? I'll lift it for you. I always tell people I have the stamina of a middle lineman on a football. So, it's like 30, 40 seconds, and then you got to take 5 minutes to rest. But if you ask me to go a quarter of a mile on a walk or a hike, it's like, nah, my body's not ready for that. But that's, so when we talk about guilt, guilt comes in all different phases. If I were to eat a donut, I might feel guilty about eating a donut. But, you get to make those choices. And why should I feel guilty if I've made the right choice? Now, if my wife's sitting next to me, I'll probably have to feel guilty. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also brings up, what is guilt, right? What makes us have guilt, Tamra?
Really, it's an internal dialogue, a belief that we are not living up to expectations. It could be internal and it can be external. It really doesn't matter. The mind doesn't realize the difference between the two. It's just an intense feeling in the body of shame. And it's kind of the looming cloud that comes over and kind of tries to hijack our sense of center, our sense of ourselves, and control our behaviors. I kind of think of it as the ego's little underdog, you know, kind of coming in and skewing your perception and trying to make you do things out of judgment versus truth.
You know, and that's just the judgment of our expectations of what should or could or might have happened. You know, yeah. I know people who deal with guilt all the time when it comes to like their children. So if they're divorced, you know, and their children have bopped back and forth, and then sometimes there's behaviors or traits that people don't, they go, wow, I don't, you know, like they were rude or they were upset or they're mean, and they go, what could I have done? You know, it's probably my fault because I wasn't there. You know, that type of guilt can really just eat you alive. And the truth is, most of us do the best we can do under the situation, circumstances we're there for. And so we have to learn that, like you said, it's internal. It's one of those things where no matter what that guilt is, you have to say, did I do it on purpose? Now, if you did it on purpose, go ahead and feel guilty. You know, if I go out and shoot somebody in the head, you know, I probably should feel a little guilty about that, you know. But if what I did was the best of my ability to discipline somebody or raise somebody or, you know, involved in a relationship, if I forget that it's Valentine's Day, I don't know how you could forget Valentine's Day, but if you forgot it was Valentine's Day and didn't buy your partner something, should you feel guilty about it? Is that something that, you know, again, is internalized, or can you make it up? And usually, I always say it's an outside, because if I don't buy, you know, not now with where I'm at now, but in the past, if I was dating somebody especially, and I didn't get them something, or I didn't do it exactly right, you know, they would say, is that all you think of me? And you're like, now I feel guilty for not having done that. But that's, we get to choose that feeling, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to derail for just 1 minute. Somebody's saying they have no sound. Could someone give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can hear us? If not, we will have to restart. But
well,
we're going to keep on going.
That's just AJ. AJ, you can't hear us? Carla, can you hear us?
Too cute. Anyway, I agree with you intensely on that. It is really, truly, especially, I think it does show up prevalent in divorce situations and relationships that are strained. You know, like when, it's just a great, perfect example is divorce, because of the fact that a child is making up belief systems, understandings based on lack of information. And so because each parent is so afraid to share or let, you know, the child know the truth, or maybe they talk negatively and a skewed version of their perceptions and not necessarily truth, it leaves a child in a state of confusion and uncertainty. Thank you so much. And it can spin people out even more. You know, that guilt, you know, can be intensified because the children may start to act out, or maybe you know, you weren't your best self because you were emotional and you have guilt around your child seeing you being emotional. There's so much there when it comes to divorce and guilt. It's probably the number one issue around divorce, is how to have a voice in a relationship with your children, with your ex, and with yourself, in navigating the healing process around that. So I think guilt is a big culprit that blocks us from being open and vulnerable in those spaces. We're, you know, feeling the pre-onset of shame, of misunderstandings and misinterpretations. So I agree with you. I think a lot of the times, you know, it's really, it's in us. It's a belief system before we even start going out there and start investing.
But it's also, you know, it's something that if we don't take command, if we aren't in charge of our own feelings and emotions, we can always blame somebody else. And I do workshops, you know, and one of the workshops I do is on, you know, things like that. So I always talk about you know, how was your mother? My mother, you know, was the queen of guilt, you know, and if you don't call your mother, you know, when you know, what happens when you don't call your mother? And I ask, and some people will say, oh, my mother will say, oh, I'm so glad you're okay. I go, really? Your mother says that? I said, my mother says, laying on the floor, and you wouldn't have even crazy, you know? And so when you understand that guilt happens because we allow it to happen, boy, a whole different ball game is in there, you know? Hey, I'm gonna adjust. You go ahead and talk a second. I'm gonna adjust. I don't think my airplane mode took, so I'm gonna try that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of behavior around taking ownership around your guilt and starting to understand that guilt is just an underlining belief system, but also you are in control of that. That action and reaction that happens is an invested belief that you think you should be different or showing up different. So I think I may have lost Steve. When he starts to mess with it, it starts to go crazy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have messed with it in the middle, but I got like 3 messages and I know how much that bugs you, so I'm trying to fix it because it's like, I forgot to put on my airplane mode like she told me to. Now, I felt guilty about that.
Well, there's so much love here, it doesn't matter.
Well, as guys, if a beautiful woman tells us to do something, we don't do it. We always like, oh my God, I feel guilty,
Too funny. It is hard, isn't it? It's like, you try to navigate things and it doesn't work out and you're like, oops. I think I was just trying to say how to navigate some of this guilt is to recognize when it pops up for you, when you're starting to feel some of that resistance and some of that uncomfortable. I think we all recognize the sensation of guilt. We start, shouldn't have said that, or gosh, if I could have done that differently. We start to replay. I think of this a lot with my relationship folks that I'm working with, that they'll replay again and again a relationship or something they said or something they did, and they'll go over and over and over and over again, like different ways. Yes. And before they know it, they're down a different rabbit hole. They're just totally invested, and they get lost. They get lost in that space. And that is where guilt hijacks us. That's kind of what I call dwelling. We get lost in that state of, invested belief. And do you have clients that are like that too? They get really invested
and trying to get people out of there. It's trying to say, okay, you've spent enough time there. You can't be there. That's that guilt that I should have done this. Maybe I could have done that. Well, why didn't I think of this? And you're like, stop, right? It's in the past now. All we can do is move forward and fix or move on. But it's once they've got it here, it's like that's, I tell people all the time, it's the things that we plant in ourselves and the things that we allow others to plant in us are really huge. And they come back and I always, I got one example that I use all the time. Somewhere way in my past, probably when I was 12, 14, 16 years old, I read something where the guy said in a book that said a real gentleman excuses himself even when he's alone if he were to burp, right? And boy, somehow that just went right in here, and I'm like, all the time, I could be dead alone here in this house, and I burp, and I always go, excuse me. We allow those things in our heads.
That's cute. I do think that there is an opportunity to shift guilt into a tool. I don't know if you've ever played with this, but I truly believe that all of our, our traps and our self-sabotage moments, there are opportunities. I don't think the ego's wrong. I think there's just a way to use it. And my go-to is when I'm working with my clients on that little, that belief system that they should have said something, could have done something, or, next time they will do. I asked them, I said, why do you think you're like replaying that over and over again? What story of shame what belief system did you make up about you in that experience? And usually it's, I was bad, I'm embarrassed, I have shame, it's all that, it's not seen, not heard, same old stuff. And but the underlining truth of that is when we role play, we kind of create success the next go around. So we don't want to shame ourselves, shame ourselves into saying we shouldn't. That was not the, what is that? Kindergarten moment. Joking. Nobody's here to give me the highlights either. So we can look for these moments where, instead of they're making, feeling guilty wrong or making more shame around feeling the story of guilt, I kind of play with it and say, maybe the reason I needed to feel guilty was to play through something differently. So the next time it shows up, I have this really cool opportunity to try something different and not regurgitate the same pattern. And this goes the same thing with kids and divorce and relationships of any kind. Usually when you did something in you're embarrassed or you create that, story, embarrassment and guilt are kind of like bedfellows. They're kind of the same.
Yeah.
So you can recognize when those things pop up, they're like, okay, what could I have done different? Or how would that have felt if I had done this? And instead of investing that I did something wrong, it's the opportunity to play it and try something different. So the shift is really important to understand that it's not that you were wrong in what you did, or that you should have shame or guilt around that, but what would it have looked like if I had done something different? And that's the cool part about life, is we get to redo it again. We may not get to do it with that person again or that exact scenario again, but we can build our confidence by trying something different the next time. And so
I thought that was a great question. If you guys missed it, if you just glossed over it, the question she asked was, why do you keep replaying that guilt, in your mind?
Right.
And that's important for us to start to realize, is that why are we doing these things? What makes us go back to that? And it's really a pain. Go back to that pain and that frustration, that keeps us replaying it. And we have to get past it. It's all about growth and personal growth. And obviously, Tamra does a great job of helping you get past that personal growth area where you're still struggling with replay. And role-playing changes that. It really does. That's right. That's a great example.
And it is amazing how often we miss these opportunities because of shame. We literally run from these experiences. We're like, well, I'm not going to date that person again, or I'm not going to do that again, or I'm not going to speak out in public again. And we make these stories that the experience is wrong, but it really wasn't the experience. The experience just showed up. I didn't say every experience was we have to have the first experience.
So it's,
was that
there's an airplane going by. Did it affect you? Could you hear that?
Yeah, loudly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Superman moment.
I'm like, it's way over there. What?
I do think that it's like really recognizing these opportunities to recognize the proper placement of our guilt and our shame and our internal stories, because we can really miss the mark and start repeating patterns. And this is why I wanted to talk about patterns in this today. Is it happens again and again and again until you decide to try something different that works for you. Everything in life is about whether it serves you or not. It's not this right, wrong, good, or bad belief system. And I know I'll get a lot of hate mail for that. But the truth is, if we really start investing in right, wrong, good, or bad, we stay stuck in our beliefs of pain. And we miss those really cool opportunities to learn because we're so invested in our guilt and shame. We don't get to try something different. We start missing that opportunity. So I always speak about, does it serve me or doesn't it serve me? Because inevitably we do things that serve us. They build us, they grow us, and show us new senses of ourselves. So holding on to that story of guilt or shame, or that story of I shouldn't have said that, or I could have done that differently, keeps you stuck. But if you say, wow, that really didn't work out so great for me, or I didn't really like how that person felt after I did whatever, maybe I'll try it a little different next time, or maybe there was an opportunity for me to try that differently, or maybe even circle back. What's that?
But here's what is important in this. Tamra is real good about saying, hey, maybe you could try this or maybe you could try that. But the answer is most of us don't know how to do that. That's why we need to get in touch with somebody who can help us overcome those habits that we've put inside of us. We have to get past those. And she's absolutely excellent at saying, here's how we get past that. Here's how we do this. But most of us, can't. We sit and we replay it and we replay it and we replay it. And so you need to involve another person who can help you get past it, who somebody says, how's this serving you? Because really, it's never serving. If we talk about that kind of stuff, guilt is never serving unless you take it as that lesson that comes out and then experience it from there. But most of us keep replaying it, and we'll replay it for years, maybe decades, where guilt just starts to beat us up so bad. And like she said, we'll refuse to do certain things. We'll refuse to participate in certain things because that guilt just comes up on us. We're like, ugh, I don't like that. And so understand that sometimes you need to call somebody like Tamra and say, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me get past it?
Yeah, getting support outside of ourselves is so important. And, you know, even reaching out for someone like Steve who can help you see things from a different perspective can bridge that confusion. Because sometimes we're replaying the records over and over again and trying to see from a different perspective. But because we're so invested emotionally, we can't see it differently. And that's normal. That's not wrong. It's actually survival behavior. But recognizing that hearing somebody else's perspective or thoughts on something, and somebody who's neutral, a lot of the times our friends and our family are invested in it being done their way or from their perspective, and it ends up feeling like you're being fixed versus supported. And there's a big difference there. Because you know, our family and friends love us for who we are.
Me.
Our friends and family do love us for who we are, but unfortunately, they know the sums of our past better from a different perspective than maybe the way you really intended to show up. And so a lot of those behaviors, because of the way they saw us in the past, will show up again in the relationship and you'll feel judged. And that does create a resistance and more intense restriction in your relationships. And so then you'll start feeling that whole story of blame, or that person doesn't understand me. That spins into a whole nother conversation. But it does, it starts to spin things out. And I will give everyone a free little tip that I've used with my clients all the time for something for you guys to try. If you have invested guilt, one thing I love to do is you have to journal. It's taking out the trash of all the things and the stories and the lies you used to say that kept you playing small. So when you write out 15 pages, no more, no less, it's called Morning Pages if anybody wants to look it up. It helped you kind of shift through the process of shame and helps you kind of recognize the stories you're saying over and over again in your mind. Now, you're not supposed to look at it again, but some people do, and they see, oh my gosh, I've been saying things to myself that are so negative and so hurtful. No wonder I wake up grumpy. No wonder I feel like I don't have a voice in my relationships. It really does start to help kind of peel back some of those layers. Do you have any secret tips that you like to use to help your clients?
You know, most of the time when we're in that discussion, that's what you have to do. You have to get them to write it down. If you say, if you write this down, then I say, if you write this down, what you're guilty of or what you keep replaying, and tell me 10 ways you could have avoided that. And then, you know, you come back to them, actually let them do that for like one day only. Because when you talk to them the next day and you say, so tell me what, and they go, I don't know how I could have, and the answer is, you're right. See, that's the whole point is, yep, we can grow, and the next time we could have done this, but at the moment in time, you could have done this, this, and this. So they might have 3 things. I could have done it this way, but I didn't. And so, why didn't I? I said, and that's the whole point. We didn't know we could do it 3 different ways at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Now you have a real visual that says, I could have done it this way, or this way. It's like anger, you know, it's like getting mad at somebody. You know, when I was young, we thought the only way to answer it was physical. We thought, hey, I'll just punch, you know, when we said, I'll just punch him in the face, most of the time we did it. Okay. And it didn't solve anything. It didn't help us in any way, shape, or form. If it was like, I remember a particular instance where a guy came up, punched me in the face because he thought I was dating his girlfriend. Didn't help him with his girlfriend, right? I wasn't dating his girlfriend, so he still had the same problem with his girlfriend even after that. And the difference was,
this is why we have so many great stories. He's the punching bag.
Yeah, I have been a punching bag in my life. That's right.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to make fun of you, but that is really cute.
I got wonderful scars. My wife's always asking me about the scars on my hands and in my face, and she's like, "Where'd you get that one?" There's a story.
Roadmap of life, right?
Yeah. You know, and sometimes I tell this story too, just so you know. It's my son and I he was about 8 years old. We're walking through Walmart, and this guy walked up, looked at me, and said, "Are you Steve Sapato?" I went, "Yep," and he hit me. So by then I knew what I was doing. So when you see somebody going to punch you, you just duck your head, and he caught me right there, which opened a nice little cut alongside my face. But you know, my son was ready for me to knock him out because I got another Walmart story where I would have knocked him out. But this guy, I just looked at him, right? Because he wasn't a real threat. He was just a dork guy who was mad. And I put up my hands and I just said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "You blah, 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 blah." And I went, "No, you got the wrong guy. I don't even know who you are or who she is, right? I have no idea." And he went, "Well," and actually he didn't ask me. Well, he didn't ask me my name. He just punched me. And when I said, he said, aren't you so-and-so? And I went, no, I'm not. He goes, oh man. Now, my son, who was 8, said, why didn't you hit him back, Dad? I went, it was a misunderstanding. See, when I was 25, we'd have just got into it. When I'm 40, it was like, see, I knew these other avenues, so let's talk about it. So we just went and got a little towel, wiped off the blood, and went on about our shopping trip. And it was something for my son to talk about and me to talk about. But we find different avenues.
I'm sorry, guys, a good story.
But we find different avenues. What I would have done then, I wouldn't do then, right? And so that's what also happens with guilt. If you're, especially, I always talk about how guilt happens from your kids. If you're divorced, your kids might come to you and say, you know, if you'd have been there, or if you'd have done this, or if you'd have done that. And the answer is, yep, all that's probably true. But it wasn't possible at that moment in time. So the options are, you could have done this, you could have done that, and you could have done this, right? So especially when they're saying, you don't spend enough time with me. You could spend time with me, right? So that type of thing, whether it's a husband and a wife, whether it's kids, but a lot of times the guilt that happens comes from the other person where they try and put their feelings on you. And all you have to do is know that it's a two-way street all the time. We always have options. And Tamra is real good at giving you options about how you can deal with situations, how you can deal with things that happen. And I think it's a great idea that we sit down, journal it, talk about it, role play with it, and try and figure out where that's really coming from. Because we know that the voices, the stories that we tell ourselves, a lot of times are more harmful than what really should be happening. Absolutely. The things we keep here, the things that we keep replaying from when we were kids or younger, just keep beating us up because they're really not true stories, are they, Tamra?
No, the truth is we unfortunately are 10 times harder on ourselves internally than we are externally. So when you meet somebody who's grumpy, just think of what they're saying inside their head. You wouldn't want to live in there. It is intense. So to understand that a lot of our shame comes from the internal story of the way we feel we've been seen or misinterpreted. And so a lot of the times, because it's not healed, we'll carry those into other relationships. And, you know, you'll have that expression pretty much everywhere. You know, you can have it at work, you could have it at your home life. It spills, it kind of is leaky and oozes everywhere. So it's understanding that it's really, you know, how do you stop the cycle and how do you create a life that brings you joy and deep connection is you got to look in. You got to pay attention to how you show up and what you're offering and how you're engaging. And if you're having that deep story of guilt, usually it's because you didn't have a voice around something that spoke your truth. You minimized yourself and you put someone's value or needs above yours. And it's not that we put one person's needs above the other or yours above them, because it's the opposite. We want to like understand somebody's needs equally are as important as yours. And when we have that invested interest, it's a collaborative experience. And we have long-term relationships when there's collaboration. When one person's up above another, there's always this teeter-totter for control. And we start to spin out. We start to get invested in controlling that issue. You know, when's my turn? When's my turn? You know, you're levying for angle. And that's not a real relationship. That's conditional love. Bottom line, that's conditionally loving. And if you're in an unconditional love relationship, or if you believe unconditional love is possible, somebody's value and worth is equal. It doesn't have anything to do with age. It doesn't have anything to do with, you know, wisdom. It's heartfelt. And in a lot of our children, like you talk about divorce and a lot of our children relationships, yeah, it can slip into a state when a child leaves a home and all of a sudden you don't see them as much and you're feeling that abandonment and you make up a story, or a divorce happens where the kids go off with their dad or their mom and you're left to deal with being alone for the first time. There's all kinds of opportunities where you feel disconnected that you can sit there and go, okay, this is uncomfortable. Why is it uncomfortable? And what am I making up about it? It's amazing how much that opportunity can shift everything for you. What were you about to say?
Making up. You know, what we make up in our heads, I mean, it's astounding, because somebody will say something, you go, did they say that to you? And they'll say, well, no, they didn't say that directly. I go, well, what did they say? And then they say what they said, and I go, see, I didn't hear that, right?
Yeah.
Which they took as a direct accusation. I didn't hear that at all. What you heard was something you played in your head, right, Tamra?
Absolutely. Or sometimes it could be even the words that aren't wrong, it's the tone. A lot of the times you can say something, and this, I get into this one. There will be a tone that didn't even exist, and I'm sitting there going, that's not how I said it, but I guess you got it that way, but I'm not sure where the tone came from, but that's a feature I didn't have. So sometimes there's tone heard when there was no tone, or sometimes there's attitude in inflection that sounds excitement, but may almost sound fearful to somebody else. So it's recognizing that excitement or the way energy is or the way we express can be misinterpreted. So it's very valuable to know that.
So the answer to those things is to ask more questions.
Absolutely.
When you think somebody said something, just ask them for clarity. That's one of the things that guilt has this wonderful thing of playing on us, is that we took what they said, we placed our guilt into it, and now we're upset about it. Whereas if we'd have asked, did you mean it to say this way, or did you mean to say that? Did you mean for me to feel this way after you say, because some people do want to hurt your feelings. They want you to feel bad after they say something to you. Boy, that's tough. But there's other people who just want to talk to you and you take it the wrong way. So always clarify with questions. Just sit and go, I'm not sure that I understood what you just said to me. You could be on the verge of just popping a cork and going off on them. And if you take that pause and ask the question, yeah, I'm not sure that I understand what you meant for that, and they'll say it again. And then you go, oh, and you let your clarity come out as opposed to your guilt come out.
I love what you said. And I also want to add a little caveat to that is you had said something about, when somebody's upset, that you can ask for questions. I also think, or I just said what I was trying to say. What I was thinking about was, I was like, wait a minute, I already just said what I wanted to say. What I was going to say is that sometimes when we are the one being aggressive, or if we are the one who's being what's the word? Attacked, I guess, being assaulted. There's opportunity on both sides for clarity. So it's not the one's responsibility for clarity. It's not the one to ask questions is when you're being attacked or when you're not being attacked. It's both. So if there's confusion, that's the indicator right there that there's hostile or aggression or the resistance is present in the conversation. So let me say that in a little more layman's terms. When you feel the intensity of anger or resistance or guilt or any of these negative feelings you don't want, those are your opportunities to ask questions right there. Not waiting for your turn, but to say, wait a minute. I'm hearing something that I'm not sure if I'm really hearing, because that's the moment. From that moment on, you start making up a story. What's that?
Well, see, and that's all I wanted them to see. If you're in that situation, don't go, hey, wait. Just put up your finger like, I got something to say. And when the other person realizes that they're just, then they'll pause and go, what? Or they might go, what? If that's your opportunity.
Usually it's the latter of the two.
But that's your, it could be one of these. Hey, hold on. Let's pause here a second because I have a problem or I have a question. And when you ask for clarity, the answers come out. So guilt happens when we don't ask for clarity and we presume we know what the other person is saying or thinking or wanting. Mm-hmm. That'll eat you alive.
Yeah. And even just to realize, when someone says, ooh, when you said that I heard da-da-da-da, or when this happened, I'm feeling this. Giving the other person's going to be still charged. They're still going to be wanting to fight because they've been fighting for that stance. To recognize it takes some time for that person to kind of calm down and to get to the same page. So you have to hold that space of patience or, presence and allow them to meet you where you are. If you can't, that's when you say, you know what, let's circle back on this when we're both a little less invested because I think we're not speaking from clarity. I've done that before, or sometimes I just zip it. I hate to say it. I know that sounds like withholding to a lot of people, but sometimes zipping it and letting the other person just say what they have to say gets them a chance to burn out the energy and the fuel of what they're going on exactly, that then they may hear you better. Not always, but sometimes. And sometimes time's a great healer. So acknowledging.
Well, how many times have you been in an argument with a friend or your partner and like hours later, we apologize, we talk to each other and they say, well, you made me feel this way, or you said this that way. And you're like, really? You heard that? Or boy, and a lot of times you'll say, if I said that, I'm absolutely sorry, because I certainly didn't mean it. You see, when we look at it later, we almost always come back to, I didn't mean to do that. Getting those heated arguments where you hurt each other, and it's hard to recover because you said things. But a lot of times, if you do what Tamra says, which is just take a step back, you say, hey, you know what?
It's hard.
I'm not sure that we want to do this right now. Let's have a cup of coffee, and then we'll start again for round 2.
Right.
And that 5 minutes gives everybody time to just go, hey, wait. And big difference. I mean, it's a huge difference in your ability to cope with what other people are saying or doing that you might be misinterpreting, or that they might be misinterpreting that you were doing. It's really tough. Guilt is one of those things that happens because we have certain expectations or certain things that we wanted to see an outcome a certain way and they didn't come out. So we go back to blaming ourselves. Hey, that happened because I did this. That happened because I said that. That happened, you know, it's just one of those things where guilt is such a funny thing, and it's always us.
Absolutely.
We can accept or pass on the guilt, even if it's somebody like I told you, like my mom saying, I could be laying dead on the floor. You know, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. It's only been 2 days, you know, since I talked to you.
Well, and
So
sometimes
just you can accept it or pass. Go ahead.
And I think even sometimes too, like, you know, some people are invested in some kind of dialogue that you're not willing to comply with, like a mom who wants you to check in with her every day, or whatever, you know, whatever's going on for her around that belief system. It's, you know, recognizing that there are certain things you can't necessarily live up to, and expectations and demands. And so you may have a conversation around that so they understand, or maybe they can't understand, and you have the story of guilt. So sometimes it does. It's recognizing those patterns and the beliefs that you're in. So absolutely. Is there anything you want to leave with everyone on, like a roundabout tip, or any?
I think the best tip is that if you're feeling guilt, if you whether it's your kids and you weren't there for them, whether it's your mom and dad and you aren't there for them, if you're feeling guilt, just do like Tamra said earlier, which is take that guilt and ask yourself the question of, what else could I have done? Is this serving me to feel this way? And how will I avoid it the next time? And you'll probably come up with the answer.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Just creating space around your feelings and understanding that you're trying your best, and not everyone's going to receive what you're trying to do, and to be empathetic and relate to the fact that sometimes we mess it up. That's all there is to it. It's life, and it's fun. That's the element that can be fun about life. So how can people get a hold of you, Steve, if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Well, they can get a hold of me at steve@stevezapato.com. I got a workshop coming up in, I think it's April, that's all about living your adventure, which is talk about getting out of yourself and becoming the person you want to become. So if you'd like to talk to me about that, steve@stevezapato.com. And you?
When's that workshop?
It's in April.
Excellent.
I don't have the dates in my head right now, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That sounds like fun. Actually, for me, the best place to follow up with me for this show and shows like this, I do a lot of tips and additional training for free on YouTube. So if you'd like to find me on YouTube, look up for Tamra Blankenship, Soulfire Igniter, and you can actually subscribe there to be notified, and hit that bell to be notified when episodes are being showed up every Wednesday.
I like free and subscribe, because obviously you can tell she's got some good knowledge, you know. I mean, obviously she has to have me to help her sort through it all, but you know.
We do have a lot of fun here. I'm so grateful for our Wednesdays together. I really do appreciate you. So thank you so much, and we all wish you have a blessed Wednesday, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.